Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight, episode 151. And changing gears ever so slightly, target practice. An excuse to get out. Um, so we do talk a lot about the bushcrafting things and getting out and doing bushcrafting and stuff like that, but we've mentioned many a times in the past that you don't have to be a bushcrafter to be able to go out and enjoy the woods. Bushcrafting just augments your ability to go out and join the woods, or sorry, enjoy the woods. It might be the sole reason you go out, but I mean, there's lots of other reasons. And we talked about hiking, boating, camping, glamping, whatever your thing happens to be. But another big thing that a lot of people are interested in is some sort of sport shooting, be it hunting or archery or target practice, whatever the case may be. And it's another great reason to get out there, with a few stipulations, of course, which we'll talk about here as we go on. What about you, Ben? What's your thoughts on the topic tonight?
Well, yeah, I agree that those are all part of the things, but it's one of those things is some people will look at us and say, well, this is not bushcrafting, but any skill in the woods becomes a bit of a bushcrafting thing for me. And we talk about hunting, and just practicing these skills. I mean, it could come in handy to save your lives. And yes, maybe you don't always have like a gun, but a lot of these things we're going to talk about, target practice, could be down to as little as throwing rocks at, a stump or a rock or a tin can or a ball or whatever we have as a goal. And I think anytime you get 2-3 guys in the woods, I mean, I say guys, but I mean 2-3 people, the competition is always who can do this better than someone else. And it almost invariably ends up with somebody trying to hit something from a distance. And whether it's with a slingshot, a bow, a gun, throwing a rock, you name it, it happens, right? And it's I think it's just human nature. And it's always a fun thing to do. And it's like we said in the title there, it's kind of an excuse to get out and do something. If you can't think of anything else, go out and do this. And when you're out there, kind of bored, this is a good way to kill some time and enjoy yourself. So, yeah.
No, I was going to say something you touched on, and I'd like to emphasize for this episode. We're not going to be strictly talking firearms, like not by a long shot. We're including that in there, of course, but if that's not your thing, that's cool too. We're going to talk about a lot of other things you can get out there and do some target practice with, some of which I don't have examples of, unfortunately, but they are very much bushcraft related and things like that, like atwiths, and I think that's how you say it. Atwith? Anyway, the dyslexic is not so good with words like that, but anyway, or like a very primitive sling and stone. You know what I mean? Like, these are skills to take into the woods, potentially, and they could save your life. They could work in a survival situation. You can use it for basic hunting needs. And as we're going to talk about tonight, they're just plain fun. Sometimes the more primitive you get with things, the more interesting it gets. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. Don't feel like all we're going to chat about is firearms. I just kind of want to put that out there because I can almost hear the eyes rolling. Oh, it's going to be a gun episode. Not the case. We're going to mention them. We'll talk a little bit about them. They got their spot, but that's not exactly what tonight's all about.
No, but do you want to get them out? Because although there's things a lot of people be interested in, they're by no means the basis of it. Do we just want to talk about guns and kind of get them out there?
Might as well. Why don't we just clear that one right now? Because honestly, it is a very small section in the list of things I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So, something that Ben and I enjoy. We're both hunters. Like, don't get us wrong. I believe you rifle hunt as well too, Ben, don't you? So we both do a little rifle hunting. So sometimes it's good just to get out there and you want to hone your skills, specifically for the reason of you want a good, clean, ethical kill if you're gonna hunt something. You know what I mean? Neither of us wants anything to suffer. And it's also good shot placement. When you get better at it, you end up ruining less meat, if that makes any kind of sense. For anybody that hunts, they know what I mean. But anybody that doesn't hunt, the better shot placement you can have, the more bountiful harvest you will get out of that, whatever you happen to be hunting, be it a rabbit, pheasant, whatever, right? A bad shot, you could end up wasting a lot of meat, which once again is very unfortunate. If you are going to take the life of something to consume it, you should try and get as much out of it as you absolutely can. Bud and I both believe that wholeheartedly. So that's a good reason right there is to get out. If you're a hunter, it's very good to get out and just, make sure you're still shooting accurately and things like that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with a firearm. We're going to talk about some air rifles here in a minute and some other things like that. You can just train yourself for looking for distances. That's a part of it as well. And just, go through the motions. I know for myself, and I'm going to draw on this a little bit, I wanted to do some sport shooting where you would transition from one weapon to another and you'd move around and things like that. A lot of times you didn't need the weapon to train yourself to get the muscle memory for what you want to do effectively. So you could do things like training drawing or on slinging and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I won't get into it too much, but there's definitely more that you can do with them than just that.
Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to throw, if you want to talk about rifles, shotguns, the issue with that generally is you're more or less going to have to go to a range. There's very few places you're going to get to go and just carry it and practice and play with these things.
At least in our neck of the woods. We do realize we have global friends out there. Some of you folks have a little different rules than we do here in Canada. In Canada, our firearm laws are
pretty stringent.
Yeah, they're pretty stringent. I was trying to think of the best way to say it. They're not crazy like some other places, but they're pretty intense when you get into it.
So, and that's why we're not going to concentrate a ton on them. If you're interested in that thing, there is some licensing involved. You do have to have your firearms acquisition card. There's hoops you have to go through, but there are plenty of options out there. And I think that's kind of what we need to sort of get away from this. Like, those are great. We're not dissing them at all, but it's not the focus of today's show. There are plenty of options out there that are non-firearms acquisition certificates, non-FAC, PAL, whatever it is now, requirements. And the first thing we'll talk about, simply because it is the most but not covered under, would be your majority of your air rifles, air pistols. Right?
And that's correct. Once again, speaking here in Canada, still a little bit of a gray area, depending on your muzzle velocity. You could fall back into that. Anybody else that's out there listening to this, once again, check your local laws and regulations. It's going to differ depending on where you're at. For us, yeah. I think we looked this up, 500 feet a second, anything over that's considered a firearm now. So it's one of those things. Just make sure you are in compliance with your local laws and regulations. We don't want anybody out there getting in trouble trying to enjoy themselves.
Yeah, so many air rifles can be bought at Canadian Tire, at possibly Walmart, Princess Auto around here. There are plenty of places you can get them. And they're 495 feet per second. And these things don't fall under the normal rules and regulations for guns. I don't think they're legal to hunt with.
Once again, we're into that gray area. Our area, it's very, very specific. Some of the air rifles you're allowed to hunt with, depending on the game and all that stuff. I know our U.S. counterparts there, in some of the states, they use air rifles to hunt hogs and other things like that. I'm still going to default with check with your local regulations.
Yeah. But because of that, it's also a hell of a lot easier if you want to go test, practice and play and make counters. You can take them out because you're not going to get harassed for that. Now, on a sort of a side note to that is if you're walking down the street with something like, a full-size air rifle, the downside is somebody's going to see it. They can't tell the difference. It's not obvious that is not a real firearm. So if you're just out in the open in public and someone sees you, don't get surprised if you're going to get a phone call to the RCMP and they're going to come visit you and you're going to have a chat with them and you have to explain what you're doing. Are you going to have a problem? Most likely not, but I can't guarantee you won't.
And it depends on what you're doing. If you're being a nuisance with it,
yeah,
there could be some problems, you know what I mean? So be very aware of what you're doing. Don't try to alarm anybody. We are in in a situation where different people have different thoughts, specifically on firearms, and it doesn't take much sometimes for people to get really scared of them. You know what I mean?
So that being said, be aware that they do exist. They are a lot of fun, and you can have neighbors too close, or if you have a good spot like a field or a sand pit or something you can go to, you can easily set up a target with one of these things. Something pretty simple. I got a little example here. I mean, I can throw that in a pack or in the back of a vehicle, pluck it down in a field, shoot at that. I always look for a spot with a good backdrop. So you want something with a cliff, a burn, something that when you're shooting, it's not going to go past and out into the distance where you don't know where it's going. So I usually try to find something that when I'm shooting, everything's going to hit that backdrop if I happen to miss the target. And nobody's at risk. And usually a place that, not that I'm hiding, but just people don't have to see me because then they're not worried and I'm not worried. So if you can get out of the way where nobody's going to be bothered, you can sit there and have quite a bit of fun. But really be aware with these things of your surroundings and of what's on the far side of your target. Because surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, these will lob that little pellet quite a distance.
Some of us can attest as children we might have had some embedded in our skin because we were stupid.
I have not. But, I mean, and I had them from, like, this air rifle in my hand now, I have had that since I was a preteen. Like, I was probably 8 or 9 when I received this thing, and I've been firing it ever since, and I enjoy it. I also have a little air pistol that I really enjoy that I can show. And the difference between mine and yours, and I think I'd like to discuss this a little bit before we go on, is mine are both pump or crack barrel style. So I don't need a CO2 cartridge. I just need the pellets and the gun to use. And to me, that's a bit of an advantage for cost and effort. But there are advantages, and I would like you to go into them, of the CO2s.
This is going to be a matter of opinion, to be fair, because there's advantages, disadvantages. Some people see one thing as an advantage and others a disadvantage. The main advantage, if you're target shooting or sport shooting or something like that, is the repeated shot, usually. With something like a break barrel and a pump action, you have to build the pressure in there to be able to launch the projectile and off it goes. With CO2 or HPA, something like that, you're going to be into, you just basically pull the trigger and off it goes. The disadvantage, as Ben said, is you have to purchase that air. Like, you know what I mean? Pumping is free. CO2 is not. The other thing you're going to get with CO2 is generally, and I do say generally, during the appropriate weather, you'll get a little bit more consistency with the shot. Now, the correct weather is basically like the middle of summer with no humidity, and you know what I mean? CO2 is very finicky when it comes to ambient temperatures. Once the temperature starts dropping, specifically around like the 0 degrees Celsius mark, CO2 is very finicky if it's going to work or not. It tends to stay in a liquid state, and now you're going to get inconsistencies all over the board, and whole bunch of problems there. If anybody's ever played paintball, same kind of deal, like those of us that grew up in the 90s and played. CO2 was great in the summer, did not work in the winter, and that's one of the reasons where paintball got their bad rep. Other than that, CO2, you tend to get... You know what? I can't even say that because it's not true. I was going to say you tend to get a little larger projectile, but it's not true. I've seen pump action air rifles now that are still shooting 22 cals. So, yes. You know what I mean? I don't even have that. CO2 is a lazy man's dream. Basically, when you sum it down, it's easy. You drop it in, you pull the trigger, things happen. The downside is they're not great with inclement weather, as we said. They do cost a little bit more. They could potentially do a little bit of damage if you drop them in wrong. You thread it and you break the needle. You could ruin your... Like, there is things you got to watch for. You know what I mean? But they are a lot of fun. Generally, if you get an air rifle and you're just, being crazy. I've seen fully automatic sidearms, you know what I mean? That you can get. You're not going to get that with a pump action.
No.
But is that really your thing? You know what I mean? You kind of got to weigh your options. For me, it was easier just to get the CO2 one for what I wanted to do with it. Once again, I was looking to get my black badge and do some stuff like that. That didn't happen because the local range closed, but that's where I was going. It fit the need I was looking at.
Um, yeah, the things I've noticed, because I have used CO2 in the past, is your first, say, 15, 20 shots are almost always consistently the exact same with the CO2. And at some point, depending on the make, the model, the caliper, it does tend to decrease. I don't know what the overall shots you get out of an average cartridge, whether it was a 12 ounce or 12 gram.
It's going to depend on the type you're using. You know what I mean? It depends on the type. It depends on the weapon. Ton of it.
Now, my crack barrel's a single crack. I pretty well get an extremely consistent shot of this thing. Weather seems to be irrelevant. One pump puts a certain volume into the cylinder, and it fires that volume out, and it's very consistent. My pump, because this is a pump, and every time you open this up and close it, you add air into the chamber. Well, to get your 495, I have to put 10 pumps in.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, you could pump more and then you'd be over, but they tell you that's risky damaging the gun. So there's, that's an annoyance. If me and you went shooting, by the time I got 3 shots out, you'd have your 30 shots done on this one. Like, that's the difference of me shooting this than that. With my air rifle, with a single shot, I'm still going to be slower than you, but not that much. You could probably double the number of shots I can get out, but not because it is pretty quick if you get used to it. Is there
no, I just had a work-related thing come up there, but I ignored it. So yeah, and I agree. And like I said, they're a lot of fun. They're usually generally inexpensive comparatively to like a real firearm or something like that, and you can still have a ton of fun with them. They're a great educational tool as well. A lot of times, if somebody was new to around firearms or stuff like that, I'd introduce them to something like a pellet gun first, because it's got all the same parts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a world of fun, and it does. It gives you a sense of being able to shoot a gun without actually having to shoot a gun. It's a hell of a lot cheaper. You start buying, maybe not 22 necessarily, but anything higher caliber, you're paying probably a couple of bucks around right now. Doesn't take long to be out a few bucks. Where, $5-6, you can get what, 500 pellets, or like less than a penny a shot.
Yeah, they're pretty inexpensive, and I'm thinking. I think my 45 was $2 a shot last time I had it and went out shooting.
Yeah.
So I mean that's pretty expensive, you know what I mean?
So, but it is fun if that's the type of thing you're in. Air rifles, air pistols, things like that can be a ton of fun. There's a lot of stuff out there. We're not necessarily going to say this is the brand you need to have. This, do your research. Like everything, if you don't, you get more or less what you pay for. Top of the line ones will have advantages over the $60. You buy a $60 air rifle. Don't expect to get the most accuracy, the most high quality, things like that. Pay a bit more. You're gonna see it. It's usually pretty evident. So, what do you want to talk about next?
Well,
there's a lot.
I mentioned them at the start, so let's talk about an Atlas and the basic sling. And we're not going to get into how to make and all that stuff, just YouTube, but there's great tutorials on there. And neither one is hard to make and very little resources. So those are just a couple ideas of things you could literally go out in your backyard and play around with. Once again, just if you are using these things, be aware of what's around you. Don't try to aim at any animals or pets or things like that. Like, don't be crazy with this stuff. Go out, set up some pop cans, have a little bit of fun. You know what I mean? The old, we've all seen it in the movies. You set some cans up on a fence and away you go. And that can be as simple as you need with that stuff, because literally an Atlas is just, two pieces of wood, for lack of a better explanation. And an old-fashioned sling is just usually a patch of leather or cloth or something like that and some cordage. So, you know what I mean? And these things, with practice, can become incredibly accurate. And both of which will get you some small game in a survival situation, or if you're just out bushcrafting, you want to do some more of the, I'm going to find my food kind of deal. If that's your thing, these are great methods you can bring out without having to lug the tools in to make them.
Yeah, and the sling, I've got a little bit more experience with the sling than Atlas. It's amazingly fun and definitely dangerous. I mean, both of them can be dangerous. Take a lot of care with who's around you, where they're standing, because when you're actually whipping something around and letting it go, until you get a bit of practice, think about it's not always going to go even in the general direction you thought it was going to go. Sometimes you're going to really mess up. It'll hit dirt. It'll go maybe even behind you. Definitely straight up might be an option, or off quite a bit to either side. So take some time, go out into an open area where there's nothing else around and practice. And it doesn't take long. And you're going to be lobbing them in a
more concentrated direction.
Yeah, concentrated direction. And that's when you're going to be able to consider, okay, now I'm going to be aiming for a pop can or something that's pretty small. With anything that you're throwing, shooting, a good gauge of what you should be probably aiming for is something probably not much bigger in the end than a tennis ball. Because that's a relatively size that you would want to hit to take an animal out if that was your end game, or to protect yourself from whatever. If you're falling outside of that size, your shot is probably not going to be super effective. So it's just a gauge, and I've tried this with other things, and it's a great way to tune up your skill, to be aiming for a pretty small target, and you can consistently hit that small target. That's when you start moving back, trying different things.
And quite honestly, with most of the stuff we're going to talk about, I find it very relaxing and almost therapeutic. You have to calm yourself down for most of this, is what I mean. And I mean, specifically with the bow, that's where I love archery. I love to go out and target practice and stuff like that. Ben and I had a chance to target practice together. And we both kind of have the same rhythm. You have to kind of slow down, get control of your breathing. And it's all very methodical, I know, but there's something so relaxing about it. Yeah, mine's behind the shirt behind me. You see where the 100th episode shirt is? If I pull that down, you'll see the bottom of my bow. Maybe. It's stuck up there pretty good, and I don't want to pull the bow off the wall. But anyway, yeah. And I mean, once again, bows and things like that, a little bit more money involved. The sling and atlas, basically no cost. Up from that, slingshots. I know Ben has a slingshot there, a couple of them. I have a couple slingshots. They're generally inexpensive and an amazing fun. And now you're going to get into that little bit of competition stuff, right, Ben? Because there's a little story you got with yours. It's always with you when you go in the woods, generally, if there's a few people going.
You're talking with this.
That's the one I'm talking about.
This is a blast. This is the pocket shot or whatever I think it was, but it's about the one with the handle on it, and it is a blast. I am not good with it, by the way. I still struggle to hit a small target at a decent distance, but you get 4 or 5 people in the woods and they're sitting around and conversation hits a lull, or you pop this guy out and say, "Can you hit that?" And you throw it out there. I mean, the beauty is this: all you need is a pebble, a small rock, maybe even like some vegetation, hits out of a seed or whatever. You can lob.
Hazelnuts work great if you can find some. Not the big spiky part, but the inner bits.
Yeah, things like hazelnuts, acorns. You can lob a ton of things with these things, and it's a blast. So this is a good one. There's a bunch of additions you can get to this one. There's the armrest, which I don't own, but I think I'd love to have.
I've often wondered if this one would fit on that, Ben. If I can get this off.
Possibly, because this is a pretty standard. If you look up, there's a website where you can buy this and all the accessories. And the handle on this was made by a company that sort of just was an add-on.
And that wouldn't surprise me. You know what I mean? Like I next time I come up, I'm gonna bring this handle and we're gonna try that because it's. I've been kind of curious ever since I got this slingshot.
It's simpleshot.com. You look them up. There's all kinds of. I mean, trust me, they did not sponsor us in the least. But no, they sell all kinds of accessories. So you can buy a biscuit for this, a different pouch, and you can shoot arrows.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen before.
And it's shockingly accurate. And I've watched videos. I haven't tried it. I don't have the setup. But a guy was driving arrows clean through a large pumpkin, like just lobbing them right in. Like the arrow's gone. Like the head comes out, the tail's still stuck in there, and that's enough to take down an animal if you had to. And it's a ton of fun to play with these things. Like you said, there's another version. I bought these for my daughters. You hold them like that, pull back, man, or that, however you want to do it, man. Great bit of fun. I bought a handful of these for the girls. You have this style. This is just from Canadian Tire. Not a ton of money involved in that. Like, you can buy the shot, but if you don't buy the shot, it's a one-time purchase. If you're just deciding to use pebbles and stuff, it's as easy as when you're out for a hike and you see a nice riverbed, you look there, you pick up 10, 15, 20 piece small rocks, and you're looking for what? Quarter inch?
Well, funny enough, the orange handled one I had right here, I picked it up not long ago because I was looking for another slingshot to go out with somebody else and have a little bit of fun. It came with some ammo. And it's the weirdest stuff ever. It's like little plastic spheres. And they're not much bigger. If I can get one out without them all going all over the place. They're literally not that much bigger than like a kernel of corn or a large pea.
Yeah. I have two steel shots that I got when I got this thing. And one I think is quarter and another's 3/8.
Quarter would sound about right for these.
3/8 is small and not a ton of momentum behind it. Great fun. The quarter inch is heavy. Like something gets hit, like if you be careful with that. If it hits a rock and comes back at you, you're going to regret your day. Like it's going to hurt. That's just they penetrate, but
I mean, once again, to get set up with this stuff, there's no real cost involved. This was the set I purchased as the backup to basically teach somebody how to shoot a slingshot, and I think it was only $34 or something like that. Like it was not that costly, and it was a decent slingshot. Not top of the line, but not bottom of the barrel either. It's a Barnett Cobra, something like that. It did come with the arm guard that I just pulled off so we could show Ben there, but I mean, it's got a sight, it's got everything you need. $34, one-time purchase, as you said, and you can get out there with some pebbles or whatever and have a ton of fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, they are a ton of fun. And I highly suggest, if you're looking for something, because these here, you can carry that in your shirt pocket. You could,
Something I used to do with mine a lot when I was out bushcrafting and stuff like that. Once again, kind of like you said, when people are around, it's good to have a competition. I generally went more by myself. I used to love to try and take this and pick off broken limbs. Like, the dead, dry limbs. Take a rock and just see if you could crack the limb off. And you'd be surprised how good you get with just a little bit of practice.
Yeah. 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 And you know what? This is getting a little deeper into my mind and maybe some people be comfortable with it. But I think every guy does it. You get out there and you set up a little target, and we all kind of go into that spot where we're thinking, we build up a little scenario. The target is a this, and I'm shooting it, and this is what's going to happen. And the more you get into that headspace, because it's a bit odd. Like I can remember thinking, if I can hit the edge of that can, I can spin it around, and maybe I can shoot inside the hole, or maybe I can take a letter out. When you get down to that level, and you're aiming for like specific parts of a target, and make a game of it in your head, you know, you could spend hours at it, and you get really good, really quick.
Me and a buddy of mine used to play tic-tac-toe.
Oh yeah,
Yep. Didn't take much. Be in the backyard, sheet of paper. And literally you just, the only thing is you had to remember where you were shooting, because a hole is a hole, don't get me wrong.
yeah,
And then we upgraded. We used to use paintballs. Same kind
yeah,
of thing, and then you'd have different colors. But I mean, just with stones, just paper shoot them. And then, I
yeah,
mean, it gives a great visual. You can see where you're hitting. But I mean, that's more backyard stuff again. Where I grew up, we had tons of room. So it wasn't a big thing. And maybe some of our listeners, they're in the same boat. Like, slingshots here, at least, are fairly unregulated, once again, as long as you behave yourself with them. You know what I mean? If you're out there shooting at people's windows, you're probably going to have a bad time. If you're out in your
yeah.
backyard where nobody can see you, having a little fun, chances are nobody's going to bother you. Scott just said instinctive aiming. That's great with any of these things. And instinctive
Yeah.
aiming is it's that muscle memory again. You're looking at what you want to try and shoot at, and as you draw and come up, you're just right into position to let fly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, no. Very much so. And I try that with all this stuff. Like I have sights for my bow. About 1 in 5 times I put the sights on. And if I was getting into competition, I probably would use the sights more if that was the type and get really consistent with it. But I have found just in my backyard, I have a break, like a fenced wall put up, and I got some carpet. I'm going to reinforce it, and I'm making a little shooting alley sort of in my backyard, and you know, it's a ton of fun. It really is, and it's something like the whole family gets in. Like I have, people know I have 3 daughters. Each of my daughters have their own bow, and they'll go out and practice with it, or they have their little, slingshot, and it's great fun, and it's really fun to watch them to learn this, and same thing we've said before. We may never use it for hunting. We may never use it for, but that doesn't mean it's not a great skill. It's great fun, something to do.
No, and I mean, the mileage on this statement is gonna vary depending on where you're at and what your feelings are. But for me, I think it's a great responsibility tool for younger individuals and stuff too. My oldest kid, the first time I took her out slingshotting and stuff like that, it was like the first time of, okay, you can have a lot of fun with this if used properly, and it puts a little bit of responsibility on them. Don't get me wrong, I didn't leave her alone, not for 1 second. But first time out, it does give them a sense of accomplishment, and as they get better with it, it builds their confidence and gives them a little bit more of excitement to get out there and do things, and gives them that sense of wonderment at something new and something they've accomplished on their own with very little help, and something they can build on their own with very little help.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's. I said earlier that I've been shooting pellet guns and stuff since I was a young child. Like, and I think it taught me a lot to do with respect and understanding of what it could do. And I've always treated it with a lot of respect because of that. Um, because we've indicated you can, you can do a lot of harm. You can damage, but it also teaches the kids discipline.
I was gonna say, to be fair, I can do a
Confidence.
lot of damage with a hammer too. You know what I mean? So
You could. I've made that argument. I mean, we could go. People have in the past villainized different things because someone got hurt with them. But some of the most dangerous things in the world, we don't villainize maybe nearly as much as we could, because everyone out there who can drive a car can cause so much damage. People can cause a ton of damage with a hammer or a screwdriver or almost any tool. It's how we use it and how we we treat it.
You
And
give
I
me a
think
pen and a piece of paper, and I can butcher the English language, bud.
that's just called every time you touch it.
Yeah, without spell check, I wouldn't be too good. But the point
But
is, or at least I think the point is, it's all in how you use it. And I think education is a great thing with any of this stuff. You know what I mean? Education goes a long way regardless.
oh yeah, I think education does. There's a huge difference. You look around the world with how people look at different things, and then the crimes and stuff against it. Like we'll use firearms for this. There's almost as many firearms per person in Canada as there is in other countries that have a much worse record. But our culture towards it is significantly different. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with training, education, and stuff, and what it's been seen for. I've I have never looked at a gun as a means of self-defense.
I look at it as something that I can enjoy to sport shoot and put meat in my freezer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and me too. And it's been treated like that. And when we seen them growing up, we always knew that was a tool that you took when you needed to go hunting, to get food, and it was always treated with respect. It was always locked up. The ammo was always put separate because we knew that it was a danger in the wrong hands, or if someone got careless, or you know.
And on that,
So,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. You.
No, I was going to say, on that note, that can be true about anything we're talking about here tonight. You know what I mean? Like a slingshot, one of these pellet guns, an atlas, a sling, a bow, which we'll get into here in a second, crossbow, another one. Like, I mean, it's all about how you treat it. So I guess bottom line is treat your tools with respect. Generally, they'll work good for you. You start screwing around doing stuff you shouldn't, it's not going to take long before it bites you in the butt.
Yeah. We said hammered axe. You know, how many times do you hear people talking bushcraft? You know, I don't take an axe; it's very dangerous. Well, yeah, by its very nature, it could be very dangerous. But you keep it sharp, you use it correctly, the likelihood of getting hurt is very slim.
Ever have one of those blow up in your pocket? It's a
No.
big lighter. I have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So once again, simple, benign things. But anyway, we kind of digress.
Well, but
sorry,
I think it's important. I was at a search site. I'm in search grass. So I was at search site one day. And I was looking over, and there's a man walking through the middle of the base with an axe and no sheath over it in his hand, just walking around with it.
I mean, that's a good way for somebody to catch the pointy end of the stick, so to say.
What are the, how ridiculously unsafe is that? What if he tripped? What if he fell? What if he wasn't paying attention? Like, I've seen people seriously injured that way. It's no different. And any tool, you don't walk around with a gun loaded unless you expect that you're going to shoot it. And if you have it loaded, like, you have a plan, and there's safeties, and there's everything you have in your mind. Like, that's the way it needs to be treated. Axe, your Bic lighter. I mean, there's plenty of things you can do to lower the likelihood of that Bic lighter exploding in your pants.
Oh yeah, there was a ton of factors that led up to that. Trust me.
One of the things I've seen is you wrap it with a piece of cardboard and then tape it up so that you can't actually depress the thing. When you need it, you pull that out. Not only does that protect you from accidentally letting the gas out, but it also makes it a bit waterproof. So if you fell in the water, got out, lighter would probably still work.
I can't remember where I was going to go with our topic.
Completely.
What?
I completely derailed it.
Yeah, that's all right. I think, I guess bows. We were kind of heading in that direction, and that's kind of where my bread and butter is for me. You know what I mean? That's the one. That's my go-to. That's what makes me feel happy. It's what de-stresses me. I love just shooting out in the backyard. I got a great neighbor. They don't mind, so I'm good to go. And I enjoy taking it out into the woods to hunt and to stump shoot, which is something I want to talk about. Stump
Oh,
shooting
yeah.
is a great way to build skills and costs very little money.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I only heard of stump shooting a few years ago. I can honestly say I haven't really done it, but
So what stump shooting is, for anybody out there that's wondering, is take a few field points with you, and basically the punky kind of stumps and stuff that you see out there from blowdowns and stuff like that, you just use those as your target and stuff like that. Once again, be careful, your backdrop, all that good stuff. You got to use some common sense. But if you shoot into like a good solid tree, there's a real good chance you're either gonna A, damage your arrow, or B, the tip of it is gonna stay in that tree. You know what I mean? So with these punky stumps and stuff like that, you can generally find them pretty easy just walking around the woods. At least here you can in our neck of the woods. It gives you something that you can shoot into that you can still retrieve your arrow back undamaged.
it for anyone who's never done this, if you accidentally hit a solid piece of wood with an arrow, um, you better bring your A game when you try and get that arrow back out because you ain't just pulling that straight out. You're most likely damaging your arrow if you're not really careful. And you'll almost have to cut that tree down or cut that piece of wood clean in half and try and split it to get that arrow out. And
So I got a little story for you, Ben.
go ahead.
Before my neighbor, and I should have asked right away, before I could fire between my yard and his yard with the bow, what I used to do was open up my garage, put my target inside the garage, and I would fire into my garage. 100% good backstop. If I missed, all it was going to hit was my garage, all that good stuff. Now, anyway, I have a decent target I was shooting, and a buddy of mine, Marcus, he wanted to learn to shoot the bow. So, yep, no problem, but you know, it's like baseball, two hands for beginners. So, what you're going to do, stay close. So, we started at about the 10 yards. First shot, a little iffy. Second shot, pretty good. Third shot, okay. I'm like, all right, so you kind of got it down. We'll go back to 20, 15, 20 yards. That's generally where I practice at. You should be okay to keep it in the garage. And in the garage, he did. Missed the target and straight into the bench. And that field tip is still in that bench. You know what I mean? The arrow shattered, so it was easy to pull out. But yeah, that field tip is still going to be in that workbench probably long after I'm gone. It is never coming back out of there unless I cut it out.
Yeah, no, 100%. I've seen this time and time again. When I was a young kid, and my father worked at a warehouse. One of the other guys that worked there, his son was getting really into archery, and that was a story they told where the young fella came up, and he wasn't very old. He was early teens, and he had his little boat up there, and he shot into a piece of 2x4, and they had to cut that 2x4 completely in half to get that arrow. Like it went through, and the arrow was stuck like pretty well midway of the arrow, right through a piece of 2x4. So trust me, it's going to go in deep. So like you said, the rotten stumps, perfect thing to shoot at. I have had huge success with a bale of peat moss.
Yep, that'll work good.
I don't know what it costs right now, but at the time you could usually pick up peat moss for $5 to $10 for like a square yard. And,
yeah, just from the garden center there.
Yeah, from the garden center. That and a roll of duct tape. And you set it up and you shoot through. When you're finished, you cover all the holes up with the duct tape so it's good again.
I'm going to tell you right now, you know the white covered targets from like any of the archery stores or stuff like that, they kind of got like the white burlap on the outside of them?
Yeah.
100%. That's a cardboard box with shredded t-shirts stuffed inside it, and that is thrown over top of it. We bought one and cut it apart just to see. And that's all it was. It was a cardboard box, one of those thicker, waxier cardboard boxes, and it looks like T-shirts that went through a paper shredder. That's all it was. Like you can still read some of the writing on them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can see that. So that's exactly it, though. Like it's not hard to make one. They're not that expensive. There are lots of options out there. And that same target, you can use that target for your slingshots, for your pellet gun, for your bow. it works quite well. I've seen a few other options. Even just cardboard, stacks of cardboard. You have a ridiculous amount of corrugated cardboard. 15, 30 layers of that will stop most things.
Yeah. Rolled up cardboard, or not cardboard, rolled up carpet is another one that works rather well. Don't shoot into the side of the carpet, but like you roll it up in the cinnamon roll side of it, for
Yeah.
lack of a better explanation. You can shoot into that, and I've heard lots of people have good luck with that. And on that note, that doesn't only work just for bows. Bow just happens to be, like I said, that's my bread and butter, but something that's become popular again in Nova Scotia is crossbows.
Yeah.
And they give you the effectiveness of a bow with the accuracy and easy use of, like, say, a rifle. And you know what? They're a lot of fun. A recurve crossbow to go out and have a little fun with is incredible. But now there are more restrictions on crossbows and stuff like that. So once again, check your local regulations. Can't stress that enough. Once again, don't want anybody out there doing something silly and getting you know, the poop stick.
Don't want to call up saying ABA said this was okay.
ABA said check your regulations. But no, these are all things you can do. You get out, have a little bit of fun. Like I said, we love archery, and that's where this all spawned from. We also enjoy the bout of slingshot fun. We both do hunt. We both do a little. It's not airsoft. I don't know why I keep calling it airsoft, but we both do a little air rifle targeting. And we do, firearm targeting as well to get ready for hunting season and stuff like that when we decide to go out. So these are all things that I know I've in the past have literally made a point of going out into the woods to practice and have a little fun. And while you're out there, you can practice other skills. I mean, the slingshot, much like your pocket shot, I take with me most times to go into the woods, especially if I'm going by myself. It gives me that something to do.
Yeah. No, it's great. I know a lot of people just having it would give them a sense of comfort. Anything with them just in case something ever kind of went wrong. Because a buddy of mine went in one time and they heard like a coyote barking in the background, and his kid got nervous and said, "Do you have your knife or do you have that?" And it made a huge difference to that kid just knowing that his father had something there with him in case it jumped out and scared him. Would you? I went blank for a second.
Yeah. I was opening another window in the background, and I think it kind of overrode you. That's all, Ben. I apologize for that, bud.
I don't know that it would make a huge difference in the wrong circumstance, but just the fact that it gives you a bit of confidence, a bit of peace of mind, not a bad thing. But the huge thing is just the practice, the skill, the knowledge. And I think that brings a lot of, and I said it earlier, and I'm going to say it again, confidence, especially to young, like youth and stuff, and getting out and letting them hit a target. Like it does a lot for them. Because once they get to hit a target, they can consistently hit a target. They get really excited. And that's why I highly recommend you start with a relatively easy goal. Don't start someone off with a 500-yard shot on a rifle, or even 150 yards with a bow. Like not everyone is ever going to hit that goal, right? But set up 25 feet even is not a bad start, and then just move the target out a little bit more, and build your skill level up. Set reasonable goals that you can meet, and then just keep adding on to them.
For instance, just to add to that a little bit, with bow hunting, I know I have friends and people are going to hear it. Oh, I shot that deer from 60 yards away. Good on you. Realistically, most deer, for instance, and I'm just pulling from deer because that's what I hunt and I know, 20 to 25 yards. That's the happy zone for 90% of people out there hunting because, one, you can be sure of the shot. It's not a guess. At 60 yards, you're kind of guessing. There's a lot of stuff that could go into that and make a bad shot. A wounded animal, and a lot of wasted meat. If the wind blows the wrong way, picks up as the shot's going, because an arrow is not instantaneous as much as like a bullet is. There's actually some time between when it releases and when it hits its target. You can, if you got good eyes and good reflexes, you can kind of watch the arrow go. You know what I mean? It only takes maybe a second, but
Yeah.
that's still enough time for a lot of stuff to happen. If you pull a tiny bit, it's less forgiving. Wind, way less forgiving. Rain, stuff like that, that can even affect it because now you have this long object traveling through the rain, gaining weight on different stuff. Like, there's a lot that can go into it as you get going. So, at that distance, to me, it's too risky. So, that's not realistic. 20 to 25, that's good, comfortable. It's pretty easy to get a nice, decent shot. And I've heard somewhere, and it's always stuck in my head, that around the 23-yard mark, you can actually that's about where the sweet spot is before deer start jumping the string. And what that means is as you let go, a deer's reflexes are so quick, it will pick up on the sound of you letting go of the string or releasing the string, whatever, that twang, and they may actually start lowering their shoulders to run. Like, don't get me wrong, they're not going to bolt and outrun an arrow or anything like that, but they could move a half inch to an inch. And that's going to mean the difference between, a nice, good, clean, ethical dispatch, or you're now slogging through the woods looking for a wounded animal for a day, day and a half.
Yeah. I mean, 25 yards, that's 75 feet. That's, that is a relatively decent distance. When you sit down and think about it, like, try throwing a rock that far, Tate. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you can do it. Don't get me wrong.
How accurate are you?
Yeah. But yeah, I think what I said earlier, work your way up, go for that goal. I watched a great video a little while ago where a guy was trying to figure how far he could actually lob an arrow. And he was hitting a target. He was hitting a target like you and I would shoot at. And he had a fairly powerful compound bow. And he was at a spot where he couldn't even see the target. And he was aiming at almost like a 45-degree angle. And he fired a lot of shots before he hit the target. And when he hit the target, he'd move it back. I mean, he was a long ways away. But you can't accurately guess that you're going, or it's a guess at that point. You know what I mean? Like, there's actual luck involved. Like, because, like you said, how many air currents is he going through between here and there? Like, how many things that can disrupt it? And just random things.
And I mean, for the people out there that are like the science aspect of stuff, everything we're doing, there's a ton of science behind it between how much the draw weight is, the arc that it's going to travel. Like, it's fun that I enjoy some of the science stuff behind it. You know what I mean? Am I going to sit there and calculate it all out every time I shoot? Absolutely not. But I enjoy that it's there and that it means something. You know what I mean? So.
But no, I thought this was an interesting subject for us to talk about. And the more I sat back and thought about it, like, I have a lot of things, and I don't have it all here by any means either, of things dedicated to sort of this sport. And so do you. I know you're into this, even a lot of it, even more so than I am. And there are plenty of people who are into it a lot more than either of us.
Oh, for sure.
Some of them I know listen to us on occasion. So there's people here that could even tell us a hell of a lot more than we know. But it is great. Set up some targets, set it up in a safe manner, and it is tons of fun. You can spend hours practicing with any of these ideas, and it doesn't have to involve a lot of money. Like we said, it's down to as little as throwing a rock. Similar things, just sort of on the same topic, skipping a rock on water. Ton of skill and fun in that you can.
To get a good skip going? Yeah. Anybody can get 2-3 skips, but it's once you get past that. Like, I can't skip a rock to save my life.
Oh, I've gotten to dance. Like, I mean, and the last ones aren't skips, but it's kind of like a ski. You know what I mean? It's
flutter.
Yeah. And this is a lot of fun. I'm sure you have done this. I guarantee it. Take a small piece of wood and push out in the water, and then try to hit it with a rock. Mm-hmm. Bounce a rock off of it, stuff. It's a whole different dimension aiming like that. You know what I mean?
Big one we used to do was the old Dixie cup. Put a handful of gravel in it and keep moving it out, and you just toss the rock into the cup. You know what I mean? And then you see who can get it. The further out you go, once again, this is one of those competition things. So once you're out like 20 feet, throwing a pebble in a Dixie cup, because Dixie cup, like what's that, 3-inch diameter hole? It starts getting challenging.
Oh
Like,
man,
real challenging really fast.
yeah,
But
no,
just
but
before we go, I kind of have a bonus topic because we talked about it right before we came on, and I'd like to get other people to think about this too. So the debate wasn't even the debate. The conversation that Ben and I were having was for any of your target shooting, be with a slingshot, a bow, air rifle, real rifle, whatever. What's your folks' preference out there? Two eyes open, one eye closed? What's your thought process behind it? And this is what Ben and I were talking about because Ben asked me about it, and I have my 2 cents on it. Ben has his 2 cents on it. And yeah, so what's your 2 cents on it, Ben? And then I'll throw mine in because I think yours is going to cover most of it anyway.
well, it's just a skill that I've more recently, and by recently I mean in the last 5 or 6 years, heard people really pushing is keeping the two eyes open so you can still have your full field of vision, and I believe your depth provision or perception stays the same. But it is a bit of a mental thing because I was always taught early on to close one eye and focus down, and it does create that tunnel vision. Um, and now when I do it, like the first few shots are really odd because I have trouble seeing the sights. They tend to go out of focus really bad. Um, but I think you're probably a lot better at it than I am.
It's a skill that I've practiced quite a bit.
Yeah.
Where I really picked it up, and I was telling you this, was with paintball. I was an avid paintball player a few years back. I still enjoy playing, don't get me wrong. I'm just getting old and fat. You know what? Old and fat and paintball just don't go together. But anyway, uh, I was much like yourself. I always used to close my non dominant eye, which was great for that first shot. But then somebody could come into your blind spot, or if you happen to have to transition from one person to another at a different distance, you don't got that depth perception, you're kind of all buggered up and stuff like that. So, what I told Ben right before we came on, and what my honest to God opinion on this is, depending on what you're doing, either one's acceptable. If you are hunting or hunting, okay, either or, but sport shooting for one, if you're more comfortable closing one eye and it's just you doing your thing, what's it really hurting? You have the time with both eyes open. You can judge how far your target is. You can set down. You can get yourself all comfortable. If you close one eye, what's it hurting? If that's how you shoot every time consistently, you're getting good results, by all means, have at it. Um, Hunting, I would even go that far, especially if you're like a blind hunter or something like that. You're sitting there, the deer stopped or the game is stopped. You have the time to judge your distance and stuff like that and set up the shot. Once again, I say do whatever feels comfortable to you. The two eye thing comes in with, as Scott was saying, instinctive shooting or multi target shooting is where I see a very large benefit for that. And I know people argue out there, both eyes open is still going to increase your single shot and all that stuff. And that's great too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a professional shooter by any means. But if you're transitioning targets, both eyes open will allow you to do the depth perception acquisition quicker, in my opinion. And it leaves your field of view open in case something changes. So if you were hunting a deer, for instance, and the first shot hit it and you had to do a follow-up shot with both eyes open, you can judge that distance as it's going away a little better, potentially. And for me, where I was trying to do IPD and stuff like that, it was easier to transition from one target to another target to another target because I could watch, you kind of have your peripherals going, you gauge where you got to go, you pick your target, you line as well as your path. There's a lot going on there, and I found a little bit of a benefit to it there. But I mean, if you're just sport shooting, having fun, do what makes you comfortable.
Yeah.
My 2 cents.
I've even practiced it with bow because there is a few advantages too. I'm told, and I am learning it, but it is a skill. It's something to definitely practice. And if you've gotten as good as you think you can get with the one eye, because that's what you were try seeing what you can do with two eyes, and you see what the difference is. It's just a different twist on it, right? The other skill that's worth practicing, and it is a tricky skill, is to switch to your other eye.
Little easier done with firearms than a bow. Depending, your recurve, is it unihand or is it single side? Does it I can't remember. Does it have a cutout for a rest on it?
This one has a cutout for a rest on. The thing is, I have access to. I'm a left-handed shooter, so mine's Mine's a left-handed bow, but I have access to a right-handed bow. So I could practice both. And I think I would be able to do either or. Just one feels more natural, more normal. But the reason I suggest it is it could come to a point where you don't have a lot of choice. And it's good to have that skill. Um, One of the things I learned early in my reserve career is the ability to get a left-handed gun is not always a guarantee. And I took a lot of shrapnel.
I can see that shooting from the wrong side and it cutting over.
Oh man, like that ejector just fired the lead or the brass out, and it wasn't the brass that was a problem, but if you don't know it, when it ejects, there's a little bit more than just the empty shell coming out. There's chips off and it hurts. They're hot.
I could see that. A couple comments from the comment section there, just because I want to make sure I get to everybody. We got Dave, real big monkey here. He uses one eye when looking through his peep sight on his bow, and uses both eyes when looking through binoculars or anything like that. Now, I was much like that as well. I'm now into both eyes open whenever I'm shooting anything, and that just was muscle memory and it built up. But honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. My dominant eye is the one that focuses in, and I almost lose track of what's coming out of my left eye. Like it just kind of blurs over, but I guess that's the way it's supposed to be. And Carl, perfect point. Shooting with both eyes open is good for when stuff is shooting back at you. Because you have to know what's going on around you, you know what I mean? And that's where they push it heavy in the military and the police and corrections and stuff like that, is because potentially you could have somebody coming back at you, you know what I mean? You got to know what they're doing, or if somebody else sneaks out of the woodwork.
I certainly hope that no one here ever has that problem.
I've never had my targets, shoot back at me, so I'm pretty good that way, and that's why I go further through target shooting, and it's your thing and you enjoy it. Close an eye. Whatever. What's it hurt? No, I think that's it. I thought I had something else, but nope, that's it for me.
We already talked about instinctive shooting, and that's kind of not using the sights. Much more prevalent with your bows and stuff like that, and slingshots than rifle. Handguns, I think it's fairly common.
Handguns and paintball, it's very common. And a lot of my skills, quote unquote, I say that very loosely, my skills for sidearms have come from paintball because they do shoot very similarly, even though they're completely different to look at, if that makes any kind of sense. Hopefully somebody that's played paintball with there can back me up on this. I found it was really easy to transition from paintball to like handgun shooting, but maybe somebody else has a different opinion on that out there. Once again, not an expert at all.
The thing I found with paintball, because I do that too, is you can fire and watch where your round's going.
Yes.
Right? They're fast, but they're not that fast.
Now, I'll tell you why it was easy for me to transition with paintball. Finish your story, and then I'll come back to this. Sorry.
So I have met a few people who swear they can watch rifle rounds travel, and they say it's not you watch the round, but you can actually see like a disturbance in the air.
I've never seen it.
But
my eyes aren't that good, though.
I have tried, and I've never been able to say, yeah, I can. But they say if you keep your eye out and pull, I've had guys swear they've seen something. If they can, they say it's like a swirl in the air.
I am not one to argue because I can't disprove or prove. I have not witnessed.
The only round I've ever seen travel was a tracer round.
Those are actually pretty fun.
Yeah. But no, other than that, I've never been able to track a rifle round. But what you see on a paintball is what people tried to describe to me being able to see. So
Maybe,
I believe
like I said, I've never noticed.
No.
My eyes didn't go pick that up. I barely notice a paintball as it's going. So
it zips pretty quick, but. Yeah.
Well, one of my paintball markers here will shoot 30 balls a second, right? That's a lot of paint coming in one. So it's more of a rope. But anyway, what I was going to say was what made it easy to transition from paintball to sidearms for me. I'm going to use this as an example, and first and foremost, this is a pellet gun. There's nothing in it. It is all safe. We can all agree, not a gun. When I would play paintball, if this was down the side of mine, I would always use my middle finger to shoot, and now it's just pointing my finger. You know what I mean? So if you point at something, generally it's right in line with your dominant eye. So if you point with your finger and pull with your middle finger, 9 times out of 10, you're within 3 inches of where you're shooting with paintball. And I found sidearms or handguns were very similar in the same manner. Now, I do shoot with my trigger finger on that one, for instance, but it's still the same. Just pretend that you're pointing when you're punching out, and you're right in line.
So, what I want to say, because you brought it up, dominant eye. So, if anyone out there is wondering what we mean when we talk about a dominant eye, is the best way to figure out what your dominant eye is, go out outside or somewhere you got a bit of range and point at an object. I don't care what it is. And then close one eye. Is your finger still on it? If it is, that's your dominant eye. If it's not, that wasn't your dominant eye that you left open. And that'll teach you pretty quickly what your dominant eye is.
I was going to say, the other one that I've known, and what I was just looking at there before I said something and made myself, look foolish, was make a triangle with your hands, like that. Yeah. Look at something, put the triangle up so that you can clearly still see through it. Close one eye. If you can still see it, that's your dominant eye. If you close your other one, it'll disappear. Your non-dominant eye won't be online with it.
Wow.
I mean, the smaller the diamond, the more accurate it'll be as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, works better for something further away.
That's why I kind of asked you earlier, can you switch? Because I swear mine used to be different.
Well, it's funny enough. I shoot a bow right-handed.
Yeah.
Much like what you're showing here. The slingshot in this instance is in my left hand. My right hand's drawing it back. I anchor at the corner of my mouth. Generally, when I shoot a slingshot, I shoot left-handed. Same thing. Slingshot will be my right hand. Instead of drawing my hand back, I tend to anchor it on my mouth and push the slingshot out. And then I'm still in line. And I use my left eye to... I don't know why. That's how I learned as a kid, and I still do it. I'm probably more accurate if I shot with my proper hand. But that's... When I go to just play around, that's still how I do it. I'll throw it on my right hand, shoot left-handed, and I just... Bloop. Same kind of thing. I take my finger, and I'm just pointing at it and let go.
There's another really good point that maybe we can throw out there, because there's a ton of things that we can suggest. Regardless of what you're shooting and how you're shooting it, really get your form down and consistent. If you pull back your bow, your slingshot to a certain point, always bring it back to the same point. Like you say, the corner of your mouth, spot on your cheek, the bottom of your chin. It doesn't really matter. The corner of the mouth is a really big one for bows and slingshots.
And that's just where I was told, so that's what I use. So any of our video viewers, if you're lucky enough to see, what we're talking about anchoring is, for instance, the sling pouch here. I take my thumb. It lays on the side of it all the time. I take the thumbnail, and it rests right in the corner of my mouth. And then I punch out, let go.
And that's really important. When you hold any of these things, hold it the exact same way every time. By doing that, you build a muscle memory, and you're able to figure out, now I'm only changing one thing when I change where I'm shooting at. And that you get consistent. If you held, say, a rifle in a different spot on your shoulder every time, then you're going to wonder why you're not hitting the exact same spot. Why is your grouping not really nice and confined? Same thing with your bow. If sometimes it's to the bottom of your chin, and sometimes it's up by your eye, and sometimes it's by your nose, and then it's down by the corner of your mouth. It's all over the place. And then you're generally, unless you're extremely good, you're going to have your grouping is going to be way bigger, and you're going to wonder, why am I never hitting in the exact same spot? It makes a huge difference.
Somebody, I can't remember his name. He was an ex-British SAS. Is that right? Is that the right term?
Yeah.
So anyway, he was in the military, and he was training our holster course back when I was trying to learn to do that and all that good stuff. But something he said stuck with me. He said, consistency is accuracy. Accuracy is not looking down your sight and, you know, lining everything up and pulling the trigger. That or you know, releasing the bow or whatever the case may be. That's a part of it. It's the consistency in doing it the exact same every single time that makes accuracy.
Yeah, and it's extremely important. I learned that early on. Forgot it for a while. Had it retaught to me. Forgot it again. Because it's easy to fall out of practice and easy to sort of like but it is very important to get like really consistent. And when I try to teach my daughters, I teach them the same thing, and they don't always want to listen. And I'm sure, you know, they have to do it their way. But yeah, get very consistent on everything you do. Try different positions if you want, but like as much as you can keep consistent, keep consistent. There's, you know, because you can shoot from your knees, standing, laying down with a gun. You can't shoot a bow, maybe a slingshot laying down. I've never tried. But like generally you want to keep.
I may challenge that. I may try to shoot a bow laying down. I know something bad's going to happen, but now I want to try. You'd have to lay on your back. It's the only way you can do it. You'd have to lay on your back. It would have to be off to the whatever your whole hand side. Oh, no. I'm thinking this is going to peel my arm off, but.
Well, and the likelihood of actually having your bow hit the ground.
Yeah, it's pretty high. That's actually what I'm worried about more than anything. Like hit a rock or break a string or something.
Well, you think about a nice recurve, like some of the like fully natural. Like this one's pretty long. I think this is a 63-inch. You get much longer than that. If you're not standing, one end's sitting in the ground.
Oh, yeah. But you've seen my compound. It's relatively short. I can't remember what it is. I think it's like 36 inches or something. But
yeah. I used to shoot in a range with my bow. I used to go down and they did it, I think, every Thursday night. They opened the range up for a couple hours just for bow. And it was great fun. And there was a few bows you could borrow down there, and you could bring your own and all that. And it was an awesome bit of fun. I loved going down there. But it was a pistol range is what it was designed for.
Mm-hmm.
And the roof was only maybe 8 feet and probably a little less. And every now and then, if you didn't pay attention to where you're standing, you would hit one of the rafters with the top of your bow. And there's a small nick in the top of my bow because of it. Because I wasn't paying attention. I heard a clank right on the top of it. Right? So watch what you're doing. Like keep an eye on that. And you mentioned bow bite. Like that's a great bit of fun when you get it.
Most people know scope bite, where the recoil of a firearm will bring the scope back to your face. Bow bite is like when you get the angle of your arm wrong and that string just cleanly hits the inside of your forearm. 9 times out of 10, it'll leave a nice bruise, and that's what you're lucky enough to get away with. On that 1 out of 10, it's going to take a little chunk of skin with it.
Well, it hurts, and I did it a couple of times, and the first time I did it was with a ridiculously powerful bow, and I showed up to work. And I was walking across the hangar floor, and a guy there seen it, and he grabbed me by the shoulder and he said, "Come here, young fella." And he brought me over to 4 or 5 other guys. And he said, look at this, that's bite. That's bow bite right there. And I was like, oh, it's so embarrassed right now.
It happens. And you know what? That's where it commonly happens. Using a bow that's a little too overpowered for your skill level. Newer people, I'm going to crank my bow to 70. When there's no need to. Start at 40. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And honestly, like a heavy bow is probably great for hunting. It's not great for practicing. And the reason is you can go out with a 30 or 40 pound bow and you can shoot that thing all day if you're decently in shape. You pick up a 80, 90 pound bow, and unless you're in awesome shape and been doing it for quite a while, you're going to be exhausted after 15, 20 rounds. Like, you know, it's going to affect you. And then you're a little bit more tired, and your form's going to get weaker, and you're going to make more mistakes. And then you're wondering, why is my grouping getting worse and worse as the day goes on? It's because you're tired, whether you want to admit to it or not. Um, yeah. This little one back here, I think it is 40, and it's a ton of fun. Ton of fun. I'll sit back there and shoot.
The thing with
An hour.
yours is it's 40 at a certain draw length. If you
Yeah.
don't draw it back that far, a little shorter arms, whatever the case may be, you'll hit a different poundage. So I'm not so good with a recurve myself. I want to get into it. I'm
You
just,
shot mine, didn't you?
yeah, I did. Did not do well. But I'm going to pick one up. Yours is a takedown. That's what I'm looking for as well, some sort of takedown. And
Yeah.
go from there.
Anyone's asking, I can't show you with this one because I have to get all the tools out for it. But and the tool is basically a string that attached to either end. You stand on it, and you take the pressure off your main string, take the string off, comes off, and then there's just two little knobs that I can screw out, one here and one here. And this thing folds down, and it can fit into a little bag that's probably 20 inches, 23 inches long. Not very long.
When it's all said and done, you throw it in your backpack pretty easy.
I can throw it in my backpack and take a handful of arrows. I mean, it's a great bit of fun. You can go out, go down in the backyard or go out in a little field and shoot, for a few hours if you want. And it's a blast.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think
I think we've
I
killed
just
our
love bow. I love archery. Anyway, yeah, we totally killed our hour. We're an hour and 50 minutes, and I think we're starting to lose some of our folks out there. So we went off because, once again, we truly love the archery aspect of things, so we talked a little bit more about it, as we normally do. But, yeah, moral of the story, it's just another reason to get out there and have some fun. Like, you don't have to go out and be in the, survival situation and hardcore camping. Just get out and enjoy nature a little bit. You know what I mean? Take your bow, do some stump shooting. Take your pellet gun, go off in the woods where you're not bothering anybody. Shoot some pop cans. Take your pop cans out when you're done. I mean, it's just another reason to go out there and have a little fun.
But as we talked earlier when we started this subject, me and you have to get together and we have to do some practice shots because it's a ton of fun. And I suggest same thing with you guys. Find a buddy, find a friend, make your spouse do it. Go out. I know I've made my spouse do it, and practice and play. And it can be a great activity. It's a great date night thing.
I've taken Melissa shooting, handgun shooting, believe it or not, as a date, and she enjoyed it. I mean, don't get me wrong, we didn't do it a whole bunch after that, but for a one-time experience, it was a lot of fun. We did the couples thing there up by your way, the hunt indoors, where you don't need a license or any of that stuff, and we just went in there.
Yeah, that's I'm pretty sure the same place that I fired archery inside.
Probably was.
Yeah.
Anywho, like we said, another reason...
We're not mentioning any.
What's that?
They don't sponsor us, so we're not mentioning any.
No, but... yeah, just another reason to get out there and have some fun and, play safe, use your head, and it should all be good. Just be aware of what's going on around you and be aware of what's legal where you're at, because I know we've looked at this. We know we have people from the UK and Ireland and US, like all quarters of the globe, listen to us, which is awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. But just be aware of what's going on in your little neck of the woods, because what happens here in Canada may not be what happens in, say, United Kingdom.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. In Canada, the UK, the States, Australia, New Zealand, many other places in Europe. Every country has its own rules. Even to the point, some points of communities and counties can change rules. So just know what you're allowed. Stay within those confines. We don't condone anyone breaking the law and getting in trouble.
But other than that, get out there. Get dirty, play safe, have fun. Night, everybody.
Night all.